I realize I could be angry at the world right now, but it's not going to get me anywhere.
Yeah.
And I thought for the longest time, man, it was their fault, and it was always my fault. I still thought that, but it was until recently I did a coaching session with a mindset coach. It took him about an hour to shift the mindset and realize one snap and you're back to your authentic self. That's the true you. Your true self isn't going to stand in the back with pencils. It's you wrestling around with little Bill.
Welcome back to another episode of the Mile 40 podcast. Thank you all for continuing to tune in. It is my sincere pleasure to be hosting this show. I can't say enough good things about the guests that we've continued to have on, and I'm just eternally grateful for you all for continuing to tune in. If you haven't already, please be sure to hit subscribe if you're listening on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube, wherever you get your show from. It really goes a long way. Also, do me a solid right now, take a minute, drop a review. It helps me grow the show, and it is very much appreciated. Today's guest is Sam Mitchell. Sam is a podcast host, motivational speaker, entrepreneur, and he has a published TED Talk called Souled Structure. He's a high-functioning human on the autism spectrum. He's on a mission to show people that he is not broken. There is no normal in this world, and he has demonstrated success with autism. Sam wants to celebrate the successes of all people. His podcast, Autism Rocks and Rolls, has made it to the top 10 in the People's Choice Podcast Awards. He's had some notable guests on his show, including Armani Williams, first NASCAR driver to openly talk about having autism, an American Idol rocker, James Durbin, who's had autism and Tourette's. He also has had on WWE legend Mick Foley, with many more big guests on deck. Sam, thank you for joining me today.
Yep, thank you, brother. It's good to be here.
Of course. It's my pleasure to have you on today. And I want to start off by saying I'm incredibly proud of you. I'm incredibly proud of what you stand for, what you've done, how you've distinguished yourself. Your attitude just reflects resilience, fortitude, and a will to show others that there is no normal out there. And you immediately resonated with me in looking up, your background and your story over here. And so I want to kick things off really quick by just giving the audience a little bit of background with regards to your personal story, when you learned about your diagnosis, how you learned about it, and how it impacted you in the earlier years of life.
All right, so I better do my introduction. I can get into that. So hello, everyone. My name is Sam Mitchell. I run a podcast called Autism Rocks and Rolls. It's a podcast about autism and how we cope with daily struggles that you may or may not understand. As you said, I'm on the autism spectrum. It started when I was 4 years old. I was diagnosed, but didn't really understand life. But then I was 6, and I read a book called Understanding Sam, and that was the leading point to me having autism, where I knew I had it. And school was hard when I was in school because I never got bullied behind your in front of you. It was not kicked in the shins at 9 a.m. each morning. It was behind the back bullying. I got excluded a lot. There was all the negative stereotypes that come with autism, sadly, which I never understood. But I always thought it was my fault, and I can never understand why am I doing this when I've done nothing. I mean, saying hi wrong, apparently?
Yeah. And when you think back to that time and you look at where you are right now, there had to have been a huge gap that you bridged there, right? Like, you spent years trying to figure out why you're not getting the response that you expected. And it probably is really hard to come to terms with the fact that society, quite frankly, doesn't get it. Right. And you had to now take this onus on yourself to show people that you too can accomplish anything that you set your mind to. And so I have to imagine at one point there was either a breaking point or there was a series of events that kind of led you to then take the wheel. Do you want to walk us through that evolution a little bit?
So my breaking point was at 16, and I just had enough. I was over it. The frustration got to me. So I finally decided I'm going to just go be myself, If it stinks. But if it goes great, it goes great. I could say at least I tried. Well, trying went great. I made friends. I felt a little bit better about myself. I put myself in situations I never dreamt of having. I would have never dreamt of having a Halloween party.
Yeah. What have you learned about autism over the years? Did you grasp it right away? Or, now when I see what you're doing with your show and the types of individuals that you've brought on, are you continuing to learn more about it? Or can you speak to the impact just kind of making yourself familiar with these stories has had on you?
Well, I grasped it more when I was doing my podcast, but from an early age, as I grasped as much as I could. But I mean, I was in that point where I thought this autism I'm having, it's a nightmare. I freaking stink because of this autism.
Mm,
But now that I'm realizing doing this podcast and evolving into a better person where I actually now have a job, it's making me see, okay, it's not me, it was them. A, B, I can still do things.
yeah. That's really interesting that you call that out. Here you are, someone who's been impacted by autism your entire life, one way or the other. And you're openly telling the world right now that to this day, you're continuing to learn more about it yourself. And that, really speaks volumes to me because it tells me that as a society, we all need to do the work. Like this is something that is very, very meaningful to you and you're still learning about it. And there are people out there who know nothing about it. And there are people out there who, to your point, if it's not really impacting them, it's not really top of mind. And there you are, as an avid learner on a personal level, connecting with other people who are impacted and going through life, navigating and trying to pave their paths despite being diagnosed with autism. And so kudos to you for that, my friend. Um, why don't you tell us a little bit about what led you to start the show?
Well, it led me to start after I joined my high school media club, and I fell in love with podcasting so much I decided I was going to run my own. My mother's reaction was, I don't know what a podcast is, but we'll figure it out. And we did, and the show went from there. But it grew very quickly. It went from 20 to 40 to 100 to now people want to sponsor our show, which I didn't know you could sponsor a podcast. I thought you would just sponsor events. It also led to the events we had. Hey, you want to do a gala? Okay, I don't know what that is, but sure, let's go for it. Hey, got invited to speak in Oklahoma. Okay, let's do it. Never knew what a speaking engagement was, but okay. Hey, we're gonna start a non-corporate board. Oh, okay, let's go for it. It all came to me, but I still put in the work to make it, to elevate it.
Yeah. I can tell that, the podcast is your baby in a sense, right? Like you've really built it from the ground up and you've cultivated it and you continue to nurture it. Um, can you think of a special moment or two, whether it was a conversation you had with one of your guests or whether it was, one of those organizations reaching out to you where, it became apparent that you're building something special?
Well, I mean, well, one special moment was when I was told in Oklahoma when I was very first speaking, your son gives me hope.
Mm.
He said that to my mother. I sadly didn't hear him say it. I wish I could have, because I ran to him again the biggest hug I could. But he told my mother that statement right there. And that makes me know, okay, I'm doing something right here.
You know, did ever in your life leading up to that, did you hear someone say something like that about you or to you? Like, did you ever overhear someone saying, Sam, he's really strong or he's really brave, or you know, he is a reflection of hope, in the midst of darkness. I'm interested. Have you ever heard anyone say anything about you like that out loud?
Oh no. Before that, I was getting jabbed in the back with pencils and called dumb ASF.
Yeah. I bring that up because I can relate to that. Um, I talk about it in my first book. The very first time that I heard someone, and it was my dad, in front of a group of people, he said, one of the things he's really grateful for was my strength. And I never heard anyone call me strong before, because my entire childhood, under different circumstances, I had always been perceived as weak. And I always thought of myself as weak. And I didn't realize until that moment that, wow, like someone I really care about thinks of me as strong. And, I have no doubt your mother always thought that about you, but there's something really powerful about, hearing that out loud. What has, maybe hearing something like that out loud done to impact the way that you go about your own interaction with other people? Because I see you as someone who is lifting other people up, despite the fact that, at many points in your life, you were put down.
It's shown that I can't do this, although there are days I want to barf because I'm terrified of the interaction. Now, if it's speaking, I'm not too nervous about that because I'm the guy in control. But I mean, socializing,
Mm-hmm.
kind of like we're doing right now. I
Yeah.
mean, we're doing it for an interview, clearly, but put us at the park, there's going to be a little bit of nervousness.
Yeah. Yeah. No, for sure. Um, one of the things that we talked about last time was the fact that, despite the fact that you bottomed out when you were 16, right? You had enough. Enough was enough. You didn't really lash out. You know, you weren't, at least, what you shared with me was that you weren't violent. You also didn't think about, harming yourself at any point. And so I think that's, um, something to call out here.
It
Can you
could have
talk?
been that way.
What's that?
It very well could have been that way because I
Well,
knew making that change. I'm glad it worked out. I mean, I'm oh, you don't understand how happy I am it worked out. But I knew if it failed, I would have,
yeah.
and I still thought that. But it was until recently I did a coaching session with a mindset coach. It took him about an hour to shift the mindset and realize one snap and you're back to your authentic self. That's the true you. Your true self isn't going to stand in the back with pencils. It's you wrestling around with little Bill.
Yeah. That's really powerful. And I think it's also really special to call out the fact that you're working on yourself, right? Like, you've done a lot of positive things, but the fact that you're even seeing a coach speaks volumes in a positive way. Like, a lot
Yeah, it
of
was a
times
one
people,
timer, but the free resources on YouTube, feel free to check it out. But
yeah,
oh my goodness, I I never thought someone could do that. My mother tried, my father tried, but he did it, and I thought, God, if he can do it to a me who's kind of stubborn, he can probably do it to someone else who's stubborn.
yeah, I mean, that speaks volumes. And but it also speaks about you, right? Like, a lot of people go about life thinking that they're finished products, right? Like, there is no need for refinement or improvement. And um you had many reasons just to give up at many points in your life. And not only did you not give up, but now you're building a platform with a positive mission, and you're refining yourself. Like, you're making yourself better daily. And that speaks to your mindset, your strength, and your approach when it comes to powering on. Can you speak a little bit? I know you had mentioned your parents both tried. What's your relationship like with your parents?
Right? I mean, I still live with them,
Mhm.
happy as ever, can't complain.
Are they the closest people to you?
I would say so. I
Yeah,
mean, I definitely have some friends that are pretty close. I mean, we previously talked about on our botched recording, let's call it that, the one guy who stuck with me even though I felt like garbage.
that's right. We did talk
But
about
yeah,
that. We
those
did
are the
talk
three
about that one
people that
friend.
pretty much stuck with me, and family, and other family members.
That's right. I forgot. We did talk about that one friend. Can you tell the audience a little bit about that friend?
Well, that one friend also has some been through some tough times. He has some physical disability, but I think we can relate to tough times together. But he stuck with me since day one. There's some days I want to kill him, but at the end of the day, he was there. What can you ask for? A guy who wants to be with you despite your flaws.
Hey all, it's me, Bishoy. As a marathon runner and endurance athlete, I've come to understand the importance of properly fueling your body for preparation and recovery. Every day, you get a shot at success. How you start your day typically paints a picture of what the rest of the day will look like. Start your day with a super convenient, healthy, and delicious nutritional win. Meal 1 by Creatures of Habit. Overnight oatmeal packed with 30 grams of plant-based protein, chia, flax, and pumpkin seeds. Vitamin D3, omega-3s, a probiotic, and digestive enzymes made in under 1 minute. Stop wasting time or worrying about what to eat as your first meal of the day. Start with meal 1. Visit creaturesofhabit.com, creatures spelled with a K, and use code MILE40 for 15% off a one-time purchase or the first subscription order payment. The thing is, we're all perfectly imperfect, right? Like, there is no one out there who doesn't have flaws. And whether it's a friend, a partner, or just generally the people that you surround yourself with, you know, you should seek out those people who see your flaws and they say, I accept you. I accept you for who you are. And I don't even consider, you know, your situation a flaw. Nothing about it that's a flaw. But it's the cards that you've been dealt. And despite having them, my take on it is you've been playing them pretty well so far. Because there's a lot of junctures in your journey where I think things could have gone terribly wrong. And I'm sure there were some low moments and some moments that you regret and some moments you want to change, wish you could have changed, excuse me. But you know, looking at the product now, you know, I think again, I can't applaud you enough for that. Um,
Yeah,
talking
man. I
to
mean,
Yeah, go ahead.
I appreciate that, but I ain't gonna lie to you. So do I realize that I've been dealt some not bad cards, but some cards that could be a little bit rough? Sure. But do I feel better now that I'm getting respected? Yes. But am I cured from all the people who left me, even though I did a session in the mindset coach,
Mm.
which did help me, may I add, and taught me some strategies, but I haven't healed from it. I
Yeah.
still have some days where I think they're out to get me. Although I use those strategies, but I still have them.
Yeah.
And I never forget where I come from, because why do I still listen to, I would say, depressing rock music?
Yeah. No, I hear you. I mean, you know, you pointed out something. At the end of the day, it's all about accepting yourself, right? Like, that's one thing that I've learned. We live in a world where external validation means a lot more than it should. And sometimes that validation isn't even in person, right? Sometimes that validation is over social media or the internet, right? You know, sometimes that validation comes from followers or likes or shares or reviews. Uh, but the truth of the matter is that the only validation that counts is the validation within, right? Like, unless you can walk around confidently knowing that what you're doing is for the better good, then it doesn't really matter what anyone else has to say. And I'm sure that's, you know, in line with what your mindset coach is probably positioning there. Um, and you know, I'll be vulnerable. Like, I've struggled with it myself, and I know many people who have struggled with it. It's not easy, because we live in a world where we are not only looking for external validation, but we're almost looking for just, you know, an immediate round of applause every time we're doing something good. Where we need to understand how to internalize our successes, and continue moving forward, uh, toward our broader mission. So now what I'd like to do, Sam, is talk a little bit about your own aspirations. Given all the work that you've done with the podcast, and just the success that you've seen over the last couple of years, and now that you've started to get your footing, right? Like you're capable. Um, what do you aspire for, whether it be for the podcast or for yourself?
I aspire for just trying to live the classic dream. I mean, people told me I could never. People probably never thought I could afford a house. People probably never thought I could afford a job. But I'm working right now at a radio station. You still don't think I can do it? Why don't you go watch me at WQRK?
Tell us about when you got that job.
Oh, the job was for an internship. It's unpaid, but I'm having a blast right now doing it. I get to work on production, making some great ads, clean up a studio, even though it's not my favorite thing to do live. I also get to be on the radio at points on air. It's a blast.
Was that How did you get that internship?
I had to get through college, made some calls around, went through the process of a job interview almost, and succeeded.
Great, great. No, that's great. I mean, and it seems like it's a field that you're really interested in. And you talk about, quote unquote, normal dreams and aspirations. Um, you know, I have no doubt, based on what you've done already to break down barriers, that, you can accomplish anything that you set your mind to. And so personally, I'm excited to watch you chase down whatever it is that you set for yourself. Around the podcast, you've had some pretty big names on. I mean, Mick Foley, that's one name that stood out with me. How'd you get him on the show?
Well, it's funny. We were actually friends with him a while back ago. So I met him at a toy pit first. This was before AR. I was a sophomore, so it was great to meet him first. And then I was on a wrestling podcast called the ANC podcast. They knew about it, and I think one of the podcasts was a former ECW wrestler. I can't remember his name for the life of me, but they were friends with Mick Foley, and they made that happen for me. He was nice enough to give me 30 minutes, but it was still an interview.
That's awesome. What was he like?
Pretty cool from my perspective. I know people have their own stories with celebrities, but from my standing, he was a great guy. He treated me right.
I remember when I was a kid, I used to like WWE. I had a really short stint. I wasn't always into it, but I had a really short stint where I was into it. And I read his book and The Rock's book, like back in the day. He had a really, interesting background himself. He dealt with a lot of adversity. Um, Out of all the guests that you've had on, is there one story that stands out in particular?
Well, I mean, from a guest standpoint, I would say Temple Grandin. It's just what people can do to people. They were the meanest alive to her that I've seen. All the farmers treat her like garbage. They even put bull testicles on her car
Oh my God.
for just to be spiteful.
Oh my God. That's horrible. Um, how do you feel when you have these conversations with people who can relate on different levels, right? Like, obviously that's pretty dark. There's no going around that. But, you've been mistreated. You've spoken to many people who have been mistreated. What does it feel like to know that there are other people in the world that can relate to you, one way or the other?
Well, now I know that I have, I feel better because when I was young, I thought, am I the only one going through this? But
Yeah.
now seeing other people going through misfortunes, I'm like, wait a minute, I'm not the only one. It reminds me to be humble. You're talking about a story, I just thought of another one. One of my guests, who was a speaker from our gal, is Rich Beto, the drummer for Finger 11. Great guest, recommend you having him. He was the former drummer before he got fired because he had drug issues. But a story for him was, so Finger 11, they got to tour with all these bands, right? One of them was Motley Crue. Well, they go to Motley Crue. Great, having a blast. But here's the problem. once having a drug issue, and he needed his drugs because you know what happens if you don't have your drugs. If you're a drug addict, you are, you can't quit them just like that. Well, instead of living out his dream and rocking out with Motley Crue, he had to hide somewhere. I can't remember if it was under the stage or the bathroom to do drugs. And he missed pretty much the whole spiel.
Wow. Wow. Um, yeah, I mean, you talk about that community, and understanding that you're not alone, um, and the level of comfort that gives you. And it's understood, right? Like nobody wants to feel alone, especially under adverse circumstances. And so it's really nice that not only have you made the connection, but you've built a community to welcome the connection. And so I can't say enough about the power of that. Um, when you think about how you carry your daily life, do you have like a mantra or a theme? Like, Sam, if you were to write a book, do you have a title for it?
Well, the obvious title would be Sam Stories by Sam Mitchell. But I think we can be creative. I just think if the world could be nice and just not act like idiots, we get along so much better, don't you think?
I think we just got our soundbite for this episode, Sam. That was perfectly said, my friend. I I don't think that I could add anything else to that to kind of round it out better. But you're absolutely right. Um uh, I think one of the things that I really appreciate about you is the fact that you've been through the ringer with regards to how people have treated you, and you're now using what you've learned to empower and uplift others. And if there's one thing that I could do to close out this episode, it would be to encourage others to look at you, Sam, and to kind of ask themselves about their situation and to reflect and to think to themselves how they could be more like you, how they can take your lesson as someone who's taken, a deck that they had no choice about, who was ridiculed, spited, left out, ignored, and rose up in the face of it. And so that's my final thought for this. I don't know if there's anything that you want to share as we close this out.
Well, thank you for having me on again on the mile 40. Believe me, though, I think it took a while to get to the mile 40. I walked a lot of movie, pun intended, green miles, maybe a lot of red miles before I hit the green one.
Yeah, yeah. Well, thank you, Sam. Thank you for coming on. Thank you for speaking with me. And thank you for building a platform that is surely inspiring many out there.